All right, man, peace. So, WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder was able to retain his heavyweight championship title and belt in a very exciting 10-round performance against Mr. Luis Ortiz, the former WBA interim heavyweight champion. It was a back-and-forth fight. Started out in the first 4 rounds. Ortiz was outboxing Wilder, who seemed a bit flummoxed at the skill and craftsmanship of Ortiz. And then in the 5th and 6th round, Deontay was able to hurt Ortiz very badly. And then in rounds 7 and 8, and even into round 9, Ortiz once again was able to take over, hurting Wilder very badly. Finally, in round 10, Deontay was able to stop Luis Ortiz. But it pretty much went exactly how I thought it was going to go. The reason why I'm starting the video here is just to highlight Deontay Wilder's walkout with the formerly world-renowned rapper Lil Kim. For those of you brothers who go back to the 90s, you remember when she came onto the scene under the stewardship of the world-famous rapper, legendary rapper, and Luciferian Notorious B.I.G. She was his protege, as well as being the protege of Mr. Sean P. Diddy Combs. Just pay attention to how she's dressed. As I highlight often to you brothers, many of the artists in the entertainment industry are under the mind control programming. When I say mind control, I mean MK Ultra. She is clearly what they call an MK beta program sex kitten. Look at her belt buckle. You see the butterfly. That is why it is also known as Monarch mind control programming, or they're known as Monarch children. When you do a little history on Lil Kim, she came out of a very fractured childhood. She was abused both physically and sexually by her father, who was out of the military, a former U.S. Marine. Okay? I like to just highlight these little things within these videos because they tell you in plain sight who they are, where they come from, and what they're being subjected to, what they're being forced to endure in order to maintain as a member of the entertainment industry. You will find that almost to a 98, 99 percentile that the female members of the entertainment industry are the victims of sexual abuse as children, as well as the men, but the women a little bit higher. They believe within the occult circles, the mind control circles, that the woman makes for a better asset in regards to mind control because her pain threshold is higher and it's easier to fragment her brain. But anyway, let's skip forward in the fight. This was the first knockdown in the fight for Deontay Wilder. He was able to floor Ortiz with a very powerful straight right hand that caught him on the temple. Up to that point, Ortiz had been doing extremely well, utilizing his boxing. I stated before the fight that the counter left hand by Ortiz, the counter straight left, was going to be a punch that Wilder would have to watch out for. Throughout the fight, it was a threat. It was clear that Wilder felt Ortiz's power. Ortiz felt Wilder's power as well. They both showed that they had great heart and great chin. But this was the first knockdown. This was the first sign that Wilder saw in Ortiz that he could be had, that he was vulnerable to the power. They both had poor head movement, which is why they hurt each other throughout the fight. This was round 7. This is when Ortiz started to come back from the knockdown that he experienced in round 5. Badly hurt Deontay throughout this round. Paulie and many of the other announcers were yelling for Deontay to hold. Deontay tried to hold at certain points, but he's not a holder. He's a warrior. Deontay may get stopped by Joshua, but that's going to be a wild, wild fight. Many people made much of the fact that Deontay came into this fight at 214. You have to understand something. Deontay is naturally very slim. Even at his biggest, he's going to come in at around 225, maybe 230 at the most. He's somebody who trains naturally. He's not someone trying to pack on a bunch of extra muscle. So this, just like in the old days, back in the 70s, in most of Ali's fights, particularly in his prime, he weighed in about anywhere from 210 to 212. He was about 6'3". Deontay's about 6'7". Deontay has very little muscle mass around his legs. So as long as he continues to train naturally, he's not going to blow up past 225. He shouldn't worry about trying to blow up and pack on a bunch of pounds. It's only going to make him slower. As it is, he needs to work on his footwork. He's a very good athlete, but oftentimes he's a little too stationary in the ring because he thinks too much about the knockout. He has a great left jab. He has to use it more, and he has to stop squaring up his shoulders so much. He also has to move his head more. When you have a fighter like Luis Ortiz, who has a very sharp counter straight left, you can't keep your head in the same line. For example, if you go back and watch the masterful performance that Floyd Mayweather had against Victor Ortiz, look at how expertly Floyd moved his head across different lines so that Ortiz never quite knew how or when to throw the straight left hand. People forget that coming into the fight against Floyd, Victor Ortiz had knocked down every opponent that he'd ever faced, whether he'd beaten them or whether he'd lost. The way that Floyd was able to handle him, and also the other southpaws that he faced, whether it was Zab Judah or Robert Guerrero, all the left-handers that he faced, one of the things that Floyd always accentuated was making sure that his head was never in the same line. That's something that Deontay is going to have to remember when he faces other southpaws in the future. Fortunately for him, Joshua is not a southpaw, but Joshua will be a much bigger threat than Ortiz because he has much more power. He's not as good a boxer, but he has much more power. This is still in the same round, the 7th round. I think that getting his ass beat a round for a round in a fight of this magnitude is going to be good for Deontay. I think that it adds a little bit of character when you can get your ass beaten around, especially in a big championship level fight. Adds a little bit of character. It creates a precedent for you to refer back to in case you're in an adverse situation again. For example, when Ali fought against Joe Frazier in the first time that they fought, when he got beat around a few rounds, it instilled in him a sense that he can get through very adverse conditions. It's going to be good for Deontay because he will face adverse conditions against Anthony Joshua. There's no way that he's going to win that fight easy. Even if the fight only goes 3 rounds, if Deontay stops Joshua in 3 rounds, I guarantee you that those first couple of rounds, they're going to hurt each other very badly. So, this is good for Deontay. Now, this is round 10. This is near the stoppage. This was the first knockdown. Deontay was able to hurt Ortiz earlier in the round. Then he threw him down to the canvas very violently, which was a good move by Deontay because a throwdown almost has the same effect as a knockdown to a very tired fighter. He still has to get up. Once he gets up, Deontay was able to press the action, caught him with a very good left hook, took him down. Ortiz was told previously by his corner after the first knockdown that he got up too soon, so Ortiz followed his corner's instructions. He waited until the 8 count and got back up. He was still very disoriented, and as we know, Deontay came in to finish. This was the last knockdown right here. To be quite frank with you, Luis Ortiz got mollywopped in that last knockdown, man. Wilder is a wild dude. Like I told you guys in the preview, he has the perfect name because he is a wild motherfucker, man. This guy throws some of the biggest, loopiest hooks, and his trainer needs to get him back in the gym, and they need to watch a lot of video because he could be so much better if he just tightened up his punches. He throws a lot of wild, looping shots. Fortunately for him, he's been blessed from up above with great power. Great power. Very similar to a Tommy Hearns or Sugar Ray Robinson, someone of that ilk, slim dudes with a lot of power. But he does not have even half the technique that those 2 guys had, because those 2 guys, Ray Robinson and Tommy Hearns, they almost killed more than one person because of their great technique as well as their great power. Now, Wilder always talks about how he wants to kill somebody. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to because his punches are so wide. If he could shorten his punches, straighten them out, he could really do real damage. He's going to have to get in the gym and sharpen up on some of his flaws before the Joshua fight. The thing about Joshua is Joshua will be there to be hit, but can you take what's coming back? Joshua is going to be by far the best fighter that Deontay has faced just because of his size and his punching power. Ortiz is the best technician that he's faced, but as far as power, he's not in Joshua's class. Joshua has tremendous knockout power with both hands. Deontay is going to have to come into the Joshua fight at about 225. He can't come in at 214, not against Joshua. Joshua is most likely going to come into their fight at about 245. He tends to come in too heavy. Deontay tends to come in too light. Really, Joshua should be coming in at about 230 and Deontay at about 222. I believe that those will be the perfect weights for the both of them. but I believe that Joshua is going to come in at about 245. Deontay most likely at about 221. And if Deontay's smart, he'll use something that he very rarely uses, which is his great athleticism in moving and not being too stationary, not making himself too easy a target. He has to work on his head movement. He does not move his head enough. Fortunately for him, Joshua does not move his head much either. So if he's able to utilize his jab, go to the body more, particularly a jab to the body, would help Deontay in breaking down Joshua. He could beat him. He could beat him because he is faster than him, but he has to use his advantages. He must use his speed. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, peace.